A little later we have this exchange in the Phaedo, ekokrates. But what about the actual circumstances of his death, Phaedo? What was said and done? And which of the master's companions were with him? Or did the authorities refuse them admission so that he passed away without a friend at his side? Phaedo. Oh no, some of them were there, quite a number in fact. Ekokrates. I wish you would be kind enough to give us a really detailed account, unless you are pressed for time. Phaedo. No, not at all. I will try to describe it for you. Nothing gives me more pleasure than recalling the memory of Socrates, either by talking myself or by listening to someone else. Ekokrates. Well, Phaedo, you will find that your audience feels the same about it. Now, try to describe every detail as carefully as you can. This is the way the Phaedo begins. What then did Plato hope to accomplish through the account that Phaedo now unfolds in great detail? This becomes apparent toward the end of the dialogue when the jailer comes in and speaks as follows to Socrates, quote, Socrates, he said, at any rate I shall not have to find fault with you, as I do with others, for getting angry with me and causing and cursing when I tell them to drink the poison, carrying out government orders. I have come to know during this time that you are the noblest and the gentlest and the bravest of all men that have ever come here. And now especially I am sure that you are not angry with me, but with them, because I know who are responsible. So now, you know what I've come to say. Goodbye. And try to bear what must be as easily as you can. As he spoke, he burst into tears and turning around went away. Socrates looked up at him and said, goodbye to you too. We will do as you say. Very touching, right? And what a cool character Socrates is. But just to make sure that the reader doesn't miss this point, here is how Plato ends the Phaedo, with Phaedo's final words to Ekokrates. Quote, such Ekokrates was the end of our comrade, who was, we may fairly say, of all those we knew in our time, the bravest and also the wisest and most upright man. The last words of this statement, which are the last words of the Phaedo, are a very euphonic series of superlative forms. In Greek, aristou kai allos, phronimotatu kai dikaiotatu. This is a nice rhetorical climax. The literary genre of the Phaedo, therefore, is that of an encomium in dialogic form. That is to say, it is an extended tribute to a worthy man who died worthily. So what about the last discourse? What is its literary purpose in John's Gospel? The answer is that the purpose is essentially the same as the purpose of the Phaedo, but with far weightier subject matter. No one ever faced death the way that Jesus did. And the way that he faced death is an argument that he is in fact the Christ. Let's get precise here. Exactly what does John expect his readers to learn about Jesus in chapters 13 to 17? We are not left to guess. He tells us in John 13:1. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Two things appear here. Number one, Jesus has perfect knowledge of what lies ahead and where he is going. Number two, In his last hours, he loves his followers right up to the end of his life. If you read chapters 13 to 17 carefully, you will find that both these themes emerge repeatedly. First of all, nothing catches Jesus by surprise. Early on, he announces that one of his inner circle will betray him, and he gives Judas the sop. Judas leaves with only Jesus realizing what he is going to do. Moreover, Jesus knew that his separation by death from his disciples would be quite brief. A little while, and you shall not see me, and again a little while, and you will see me because I go to the Father. Note the repeated emphasis on this theme, 13:33, 14:19, and 16:19. As with the betrayal by Judas, the disciples don't pick up on this idea either. Jesus knows, the disciples don't. Jesus has supernatural knowledge. As John will remind us in the garden scene, 18:4, Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that would come upon him, went forth and said to them, "Whom are you seeking?" The second major theme is Jesus' love for his own, right up to the end of his life. This is every bit as impressive as his supernatural foreknowledge. Here is a man who knows full well that he is about to be arrested, physically abused, tried and condemned unfairly, and then subjected to a cruel and painful death by crucifixion. And yet in his final discourse with his followers, and even in his prayer to God, there is not the slightest trace of self-concern or self-pity. His whole concern is that his disciples should be able to weather this severe shock to their faith that would begin only too soon. In John's Gospel, there is no Gethsemane, no sweat falling to the ground like great drops of blood. That would have confused John's unconverted readers and distracted from the point that John was making. Jesus knew what lay ahead. And during this discourse, he is totally focused on the need of his disciples in the coming hours and days, and even beyond that, into their time of witness for him. They could look forward to the arrival of another helper when this present helper returned to the Father. Jesus' words express his love and his concern for them, not for himself. As you know, the last discourse begins with that humble act of love that only John reports, the washing of his disciples' feet. Over and over in the discourse, Jesus speaks of his love for them and about their need to replicate that love among themselves. The discourse closes with his request to the Father that, quote, "the love with which you have loved me may be in them, and I in them." God willing, we will say more about these things tomorrow. But let me repeat. This unit of material shows a person whose approach to his own death is unique beyond all human experience. Let me repeat that. This unit of material shows a person whose approach to his own death is unique beyond all human experience. Compared to this person, Socrates himself was a poor, frail mortal who had no assurance about what lay beyond him in death. By contrast, Jesus the Christ is on his way to the eternal Father. Before I make my final statements, thanks for bearing with me. I'm recovering from a cold, as you may have noticed, but I've made it to the end of the line today, so hopefully, by the grace of God, we can do that tomorrow morning. But let me close in this way. The bottom line is simply this. The last discourse in John 13 to 17 is a skilled portrait of Jesus in the hours before his death. This portrait invites the readers to believe that he is who the gospel says he is. Jesus is the Christ. In other words, here's my bottom line. The last discourse is a brilliant and effective evangelistic tool. Thank you.